All right, here we go.
What's good, everybody? I'm Robert Dickens Jr.
This is Ryan Reed.
This is Elanders Frazier.
This is John Gaal, and you're listening to Volta.
Changing the conversation
For percussion educators,
designers,
and performers.
All right, guys, girls, thanks so much for checking in. I'm hanging out with my friends Elanders Frazier, Robert Dickens Jr., and Ryan Reed. Everyone, let's give a shout out to them. What up, what up, what up, what up? As you know, my name is John Gaal, and we are so glad that you guys are spending some time hanging out with us this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whenever you're listening to our podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in to Volta Percussion, a podcast where educators and students talk about music and percussion and life and how we can all become better educators and students and things like that. Today, my good friend Robert Dickens Jr. is going to be giving you a design tip of the day. So,
design
Bob,
detail, John.
Double D. Take it away.
Take it away.
Gosh. All right. So the design detail for today is, in order to change the game, you must first learn the rules. I was thinking about this earlier just because I see a lot of younger instructors and designers that want to do all of these trend-setting, cutting-edge, vanguard things. But at the same time, if you don't really understand the why behind those things, it can get kind of tricky. For instance, you're coming up with your battery packet and you decide that, hey, instead of playing eights, we're going to play fivelets. And it's like, okay, could serve the same purpose, but why? I wonder, well, we're going to be edgy. We're going to be new. We're going to be different, right? Or you're getting ready to do your indoor show and you're like, all right, we're not even going to use a floor this year. We're going to be like Rhythm X. We're going to save some money, no floor. But you just started the program and kids don't know anything about marching indoor, no floor, no nothing. Like, that's probably not the way to do that, right? So you got to think about it. The people that are trend setting, that are changing things and making all these different decisions, they have a precedent to make those decisions based off of. So even though you do want to be trend setting, you do want to do something that's new, creative, and fresh, like, you got to understand the rules before you can try to change the game so that you actually know what's effective and what's not effective. So keep that in mind, whatever you're doing. I mean, I know all of us are inspired by the top end of any performance ensemble that we're seeing. But at the same time, you can't just start by changing the game. You got to know the rules first.
I think also, Rob, you also need to consider your ensemble. Because you could have a well-seasoned veteran educator, but maybe they just moved to a new school. So, thoughts upon that?
I would agree. I would totally agree. Because, I mean, obviously everything... I think we also have to realize each ensemble kind of has its own set of rules inside of things. You know what I mean? Like, you got your own limitations of, the students that you have, the numbers that you have, the budget that you have. Like, yeah, you might want to do all this crazy out-the-box whatever, and you might want your uniforms to look like Dartmouth and your sets to look like Ayala, but if you ain't got that money, your kids ain't doing indoor for free because the city pays for it. You might not get no Barbie and Ken set up, or be able to do some 14th century craziness with powdered wigs and, buckled shoes and, stockings and all. Like, dog, it's cool. You might want to do that, but you playing a different game. You know what I mean? You're not playing the game that they're playing. So just keep that in mind as you're trying to be creative and think outside the box. Like, know the rules of your game and what game you're playing and how you can be innovative on the level that you are on currently.
And I can give a recent example, testimony on what Rob talking about. So for this year, my high school band, we did not use a drum major at all.
Oh, fancy.
Yeah, it was okay. surprisingly, even by the end of the season, like we were holding things together because in my mind, I was like, okay, we'll just do a WGI win show for marching band. We won't have a drum major. We'll just listen back. We'll put the pit on the back sideline. We have a small band, so we put them on the front hash, and we just stay between. What was it, like the 30s, maybe? Yeah, like 35s in the front hash, super small. Everyone just listened back, and that's what we did. And for the entire season, it worked. I mean, it was doable. The other idea of why we didn't do a drum major is because we had a small band. We needed everyone on the field producing a sound, and so that's why we didn't have a drum major. Moving forward, because coming out of COVID and this was a completely, we only had like 2 or 3 seniors in our whole band, so everyone was really just freshmen and sophomores. It would have been easier to have a drum major. While we did get through the season without one and we held the show together and everything, there would have been less bumps, I guess you could say, for the freshmen if they just had someone they could visually cue in, because not only were they having to learn how to march and learning how to play their instrument after taking a year off from COVID, but they also had to train their ears to listen back and figure out how their music lined up with the percussion. So it was a lot. So
Yeah, but think about how better those players are going to be growing older, learning all those skill sets and having to rehearse that, man. You're going to have some fire upperclassmen next year. You know what I mean? Juniors and sophomores. So
yeah, I planned that. That was my whole intention.
I
But going
planned it
back to
from day
Ron's
one.
Ron's point, you got to know the rules before you can break them.
This is true.
So while we had good intentions and we really did think about, okay, if we don't have a drum major, what's the pros and cons? If we do have a drum major, we decided not to do the drum major thing because based on experience and other aspects, just make sure you think about not only your experience but also the ensemble you're teaching. Is it appropriate for that time?
For sure. I dig it. Dope. What are we talking about today?
Today, that's a great question. Tonight, this morning, whenever you're listening to us. Today's topic is, do we overteach our kids? Yes? No? Should we? Should we not? Burnout? I feel like we've talked about this a little bit.
Well, can I start?
Sure, take it away.
Can I finish? When we talk about overteaching, I feel like we have to think about what can be overtaught, right? Like what concepts can go too far? Do y'all feel that? And I'm proposing a question, not really chiming in. Do y'all feel like there are certain things that can be overtaught and certain things that you couldn't overteach it if you wanted to because it can always be beneficial?
Ryan shaking his head. Rob shaking his head. You want to jump in, Ryan?
Yeah, I think there's always things that can be taught more and in different ways and better ways. In terms of like just cleaning the house on fundamental skills, specifically like the idea of accents and taps and downstrokes and upstrokes. Like I feel like those are two things that can be taught just over and over and over and over again. But then there's other things where it's like, you know, here's the information, just do it. And there's got to be a little bit of like the students figuring it out for themselves. So I think when we talk about overteaching, we've got to take it as a couple different things. Overteaching is in like, one, are we talking too much? Are we trying to spew too much knowledge at one time for students to handle? And not giving them the opportunity to digest and work through it at their own, which when I think about overteaching is where my brain goes to, is that sometimes I feel the need to just, if I'm not spewing information, I'm not quote unquote teaching. Okay. But there's gotta be like math teachers give the lesson and then give them the review packet to review the lesson and then give them the homework to review it again at home. And I feel like sometimes we get concerned as music educators of like, if I'm not just spewing information about intonation or rhythm or sticking patterns or rudiments or scales that the kids aren't learning, versus like, here's just the phrase I've started using is, I'm giving you just enough to be dangerous, and then you got to figure it out for yourselves. And then once you got a basic concept figured out for yourselves, then we can start to dig into it more. But I also, when we over teach, sometimes we don't empower our students to figure anything out. Because I've also noticed, especially this year, being a post-COVID year, that a lot of times students will just stare at you. You're like, all right, try that. And they just stare at you because they don't know what exactly it is to do, versus like, just try it. Like, it's written there on the page for you.
Hit the
Give it
thing.
your best shot, and then we'll talk about it. Yeah, give it your best shot, and then we'll talk about it. And they just go. Like I had to tell a kid. This is no lie. I had to tell a kid, if you're not gonna try, I'm not gonna teach you. Because I can't. Like,
Right.
if you just sit there and hold the sticks, what am I gonna do? Show you how to hold the sticks better?
Fair point.
This is true.
Then you'd be over teaching how to hold the sticks, right?
Yeah.
You know what I thought about when you said that? Like, I thought about every class I've ever taken, and you're absolutely right. Like, in major, like, academic subjects, they teach for like 20 minutes. You get 20 minutes to review, and then they'll tell you like a wrap up to go home and practice the skill set. And as you're saying that, I was like, thinking back to like my whole percussion career, it's like, when have I done that for my students? And
Right.
giving them actual time to like develop in, because you're right. We get stuck in this trap of, if I'm not actively engaging with them in the moment right then and there, I'm not teaching them, And it's like, sometimes you have to just take a step back and let them do it.
Explore on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely fall into that trap as well. Of feeling like if I'm not talking, I'm not teaching. And that I feel like the definition of over teaching, to me, listening to everyone else's take on it, is when there's no room for experimentation and exploration on the part of the student. There are a lot of things that students can figure out if they just have the time. Like Ryan was talking about teaching accents and taps. Just having kids figure out how to make their sticks make the motion that they need to make, a lot of times eliminates us even having to explain how to do it. Because they do it a few times, and then they're like, oh, well, if I keep my fingers out here, it's very hard for me to get the stick to stop down. Maybe I can move my fingers closer. Maybe I can make my hands in this shape. Oh, when I squeeze it, it makes it very stiff, and then that's too far. I need to be a little bit more relaxed, but keep my hand in this shape. Like, students have the opportunity to do that, but I think that where I know that I fall into overteaching is when I'm very concerned about the outcome of students getting there by a certain time,
Right.
rather than I am allowing them to explore and come to those conclusions at the time that they're able to. And I feel like some of that is within a realm of like, it's understandable, just because of the fact that when you are doing things like marching band and other competitive aspects, you are trying to, in a sense, kind of teach them to get there by a certain time, because there's a competitive aspect and there's a measuring aspect, if you will, from a grading standpoint. So I don't think that we fall any different than other teachers kind of teaching the test a little bit. But at the same time, it can't be fully that. There has to be some room in the educational process for students to explore and experiment.
Do you think that's how students get burned out so quick in high school organizations, is because they don't get the opportunity for experiment, and it's just go, 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 teach for the test, go, 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 teach for the test, go, 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 teach for the test. Because you got no exploration, you really didn't get time to self-enjoy. Like actually
Yes.
learn why you enjoy what you're doing because it's always been on someone else's time schedule, not your own.
That's a really good point. I totally agree. Because, I mean, I think you lose your sense of wonder, about whatever, in your curiosity about what it is that you're doing, because you have something to tell you this is the reason why you're doing this. You know what I mean? Other
Right.
than I just like drumming because I like the way it sounds.
Right.
Like as a high schooler, I like the way a good double stroke roll sounded.
I think though, if going on this topic of exploration and allowing the kids to experiment on their own, I think you do need to set some parameters, because I know with my kids, if I was just like, all right, we're playing, full rebound strokes right now. Okay, now we're going to add accents and taps, right? Okay, now go explore this on your own and go make up your own exercise. They'll just look at me with sticks in their hands and be like, what?
Right.
What am I doing? You have to ease your way, or show them some parameters of like, okay, this is how you write out some music, or even don't even write out music. Just do some of this. Do you like that? All right, I'm going to go walk away and you keep doing that. Now go play with your friend. Okay, I'm gone. And then you come back and they're still just
It's
doing nothing. They're on their
like
phone or
setting
whatever.
fires. You set
Yes.
fires of information and then you let it burn out on its own.
Yeah, I like that though, John. I feel like that is a part of the teaching aspect, and I feel like that's probably the most difficult balance to kind of find, is giving them enough parameters for them to explore safely without squelching their curiosity. And I think that having a curious mindset helps us to be better teachers as well, so that we give the students the idea, because I feel like the best version of me being a teacher is being the lead explorer of percussion and music and whatever else. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know everything, but I'm trying to learn things by taking technique information and exploring that as much as I can, and then coming back and getting more information, and then sailing out again into more stuff and getting more information, so that they get that process of the only reason why you get the information is so that you can sail out and kind of learn things on your own.
Yeah, and another personal example, and for me, is I've been a little burnt out because I was butthurt that our marching band season ended early, and I actually got back into practicing going into Rob's part. So me exploring rudiments, I've been going through Dr. Wooten's Rudimental Remedies book, with all his rudiments, because I like playing long tracks. It's much more fun than just listening to metronome. And during COVID, he did an Instagram, YouTube live, like 2.5 hours of each of his rudiments. So I've been going through that. And so exploring on my own fake flams. And I was able to share that information because it's been a while since I've hit that, but I was able to share that information with my students on Monday during our drum sectional. And it blew their brains. And for anyone who's listening who's like, what's a fake flam? You should know that a flam consists of two parts, right? You got your grace note and your primary stroke. So if you take away the primary stroke and you're just playing the grace note, you're listening to that tap, and it should sound like if you're just playing a flam paradiddle, right? Right, left, right for the flam on the downbeat. Take away that primary stroke, and now you're playing quadruple strokes. Those grace notes and taps should all sound the same. And if you're doing that correctly, the flam, the actual primary stroke, is not going to be on the downbeat. It's going to be slightly off. So practicing those fake flams are really practicing those grace notes. And when I threw that little tidbit of nugget to my kids after my own practice session, and I let them explore on their own in the sectional, they were just like, whoa, what is this? Because we're not even at that level, but they know what a flam is and they can actually play it. We're still trying to get the accents and the taps down, man. So when I was just like, all right, we're going to do flams now. They were like, what? I'm like, grace note, primary stroke, come on, you should have learned this in middle school. Come on. All right, now do fake flams. And they were just like, wow. So going back to your part, Rob, you as the educator still need to be exploring music and your own curiosity, and because that kind of breeds that new energy and sensation of teaching and sharing that with your kids, and then they can go explore whatever you just shared. Because if they see that excitement and hunger in you, hopefully that will rekindle some type of spark in them of why they're doing band.
Bingo. Absolutely. Totally agree. I think that that would be said to be true about the programs that grow that way as well. I think those students get that same energy from their directors, that their directors do not, they're not resting on their laurels. They're not, just hype about what they did before. Like, they have a hunger, they have a desire for more, and to give the students the absolute best that they can give them, and that they hopefully recognize that as educators, the best that they can give their students should be increasing too. I was watching an old interview with Colin McNutt. I think it might have been Flow Marching on him coming to Boston Crusaders and this, that, and whatever, and the guy talking about BAC meaning something different and whatever, and he was saying that his philosophy and everyone there was, we want to always consistently challenge what the best education we can give our students is. We want to consistently challenge what is the best book that we can give them. What are the best educators we can give them? What are the best physical therapists and whatever that they can offer their students? What is the best that we can offer them? And that you're always challenging that level. And I feel like students are attracted to that, and they can tell that, so that they know that they are going to grow because they're underneath leadership that's always growing and always progressing.
Yeah, it's a different story when you know your leaders are constantly trying to get better at what they do too. Like you just carry a different level of care when you walk into the facility, right? Like, I think about the best educators that I've had, and knowing that they were always trying to push the envelope made me excited to come join them on that journey, to continue to push the envelope in that frame of reference. You know what I mean? And I think it turned me into a teacher that was always trying to push the envelope and try different things. You know what I mean? And I feel like when you have that kind of like compliment from your students and your educators, there's nothing that they're not willing to try, because they know you've got their best interests at heart, and that you're trying to do something that is pushing what they're comfortable with, to ultimately make them think about things a little bit differently as they go forward. You know what I mean? And that just drives that creativity and passion that they may carry into other things in their life, right? Like, it may not always just be about drums, but maybe they go into psychology and they're like, I remember when I was in drumline, we always tried something new every year. So now in psychology, I'm going to try this thing that I read in this research book and see if this works with my next set of, test students, or my next class that comes in. We're going to try this experiment, you know what I mean, to try something new. And it's because they've gotten into that habit of pushing creativity, et cetera, because they were allowed to explore. They were allowed to grow, because the people that were leading them, like you said, the explorer, was constantly reaching out to new places too.
I think also, going back of the beginning topic, do we overteach something? I think sometimes we as educators overteach a certain concept, is because we're not allowing our students, like you said, Rob, to explore and create those, understanding those concepts in their own lives. We're not reaching the top of Bloom's taxonomy, right? So for those that don't know what Bloom's taxonomy, you'll hear this in your education courses or anything. But basically, it's a pyramid of this guy. He came up with these different levels of how students learn. And so at the base of the pyramid, you have like the remembering stage. And then above that, after the kids understand that concept of remembering, oh, that symbol means a quarter note. The next stage would be understanding. Okay, that's a quarter note. That gets 1 beat and 4/4. The next stage over understanding, you have apply. Okay, if that means 4/4, 1 beat, and I can apply this type of rebound stroke with that. And then after apply, you have analyze. Okay, does my sound like Susie right next to me with the same stroke type? And then analyze, evaluate. That's the next one. And then finally, the last one is create. So Bloom's taxonomy: remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, create. And the higher you go up Bloom's taxonomy, the higher mental capacity of learning takes place in the child. And I think sometimes we overteach is because we are not allowing students to be in that higher frame of reference, that higher understanding of analyzing, evaluating, and creating, because we're trying to meet a deadline of something, right?
So, what would you say? Where would you say we stop at apply? I mean, we get stuck in a cycle of apply, and that's where the overteaching happens.
I would say so. And I think also, if we're thinking of a marching band season, probably towards the end of the marching band season, hopefully we start getting to that analyze, evaluating, because we're letting either the students listen to the judge tapes, or we're having the students, pass off in front of their peers, and we're like, okay, analyze, how was that run for you, or evaluate, how was the whole section. So I think depending on the season and depending on what you're doing, I think sometimes we do snippets of analyzing and evaluating. But I think we spend the majority of our time in the mid to bottom tier of the pyramid. Again, depending on your students' skill sets and you as an educator, how long you've been at your school, etc., etc. I think we stay in that apply, analyze area, and we don't explore more of the evaluate, create area of the taxonomy.
Let me offer this up to you, because I just thought about this, right? For most times when I think about my students and their progression, and we talked about this in a previous episode, whether it's progression of each student from season to season or over the course of their entire high school career, like how are they growing as a student, right? I feel like we always hit that evaluate creativity at the end of a season, going into the next. Like going into the next, they have a level of evaluation of what they did, and now they're able to offer up ideas on how to create to make things better before we restart the remember cycle again, right? Learning new things. And I wonder if we don't give them that opportunity, right? So this is maybe the educator that just has to have control on everything and doesn't really give the students input, doesn't really ask for input. It may not be that accident. It just may be like they know exactly what they want to get out of it. So it just doesn't always translate to that next level for the students. And this is why I was asking the question about, do kids get burned out or students get burned out because they never get to that exploration point? Because they don't have that chance to self-evaluate and then start to create something new, like a new blooming flower. Do we just get stuck in that cycle of overteaching because they really didn't progress to the next level that they should have because they never are allowed to self-evaluate and create?
I think I would say yes, because I would say we allow our upperclassmen, seniors specifically, to explore that creative and evaluative area more so than our underclassmen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It should
I
be
was gonna
because they're older, right? But at the same time, if we're not letting the underclassmen evaluate and create, then maybe, based on your point, E, we're waiting too long.
Yeah, I think it's progressive too, depending on what the concept is and how advanced it is. Because I feel like, to me, the ability to create and be on that higher level is something that you earn by being accountable for evaluating.
Oh, the steps
You
under.
know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
there are students, and I had some students earlier today at my earlier marching band rehearsal, and there were some things that they sounded okay, but they didn't sound great and at the high level that we wanted them to, but I knew that all of the students involved knew what the error was and they knew how to fix it. So at that point in time, because they could evaluate their performance and they had the knowledge to know what to do next, I didn't give them any commentary at all. It was more of a, okay, y'all know what to do. Okay, cool. And then I kind of backed off. In the past, I probably wouldn't have. But I feel like as long as the student holds them, I can hold the student accountable for the information and they prove themselves to be trustworthy over that information. The reward is I don't have to watch you like a hawk. I don't have to tell you all the, basic things anymore. And you can be on a level where it's like, hey, I know what it was. I just need more reps. Because that's something that I have learned eventually, to ask students like, hey, how many of you know what the issue was? Okay, all the hands are up. How many of you just need more reps on that? Cool, let's go back and do it again. We don't need to pull every single thing apart. But again, that level of maturity of your educators, and I'm speaking specifically for any students that will listen to this, that level of maturity of the way that your teachers may want to engage you is your reward for holding yourself accountable for the information. We don't need to beat things into the ground if you, one, know the information, two, hold yourself accountable for the information, and three, you proactively create the sound that we want, or you proactively create the sound that we're asking for, or that you know that you're capable of. So I feel like that is the next level for students and for educators. For educators is recognizing, does everyone know the issue as to why this doesn't sound good? Two, am I holding them accountable for it? Three, have I expressed to them that now you are responsible for creating that sound? And the more you proactively create that sound, the better experience you get to have.
Man, that's a breath of fresh air. I can't even I'm thinking about the moments. First of all, I'm thinking about how I'm about to tell this to these kids tomorrow, but also I'm thinking about the moments of just what you said. You're responsible for creating the sounds that not only we want to hear, but you know that you're capable of doing, because we've heard it before, right? Most of the times when we're talking to students about concepts, it's we've played it once, right? And you recognize that it was right, so you should be able to recreate that. It wasn't an accident at that point, right? So, and we often get in the trap of, I feel like it's hand-holding at times. And that's also a form of overteaching, when we know the students are capable of more, but because they are letting other things get in the way of their ability to reproduce something that they consciously can understand, we get into the cycle of hand-holding, to where we're trying to amplify the engagement of the same information in order for them to do a different action. And it's I'm not the one that needs to do something different. I've already given you all the information. You're the ones that need to do something different, right? Reset. At that point, all you need to say is reset, because they already have all the information that they need. It's just they're not doing it for a multitude of reasons, right? It could be for anything. Right. And I think as an educator, we have to fish that out. We've got to find out what are the reasons why we're not getting to that next level and creating the sounds that we know we're capable of. I can say it like that. The sounds that we know we're capable of. What is the why behind it? What is preventing you from doing this? And if you can articulate it, then you can typically, if you can articulate it at a point that you can articulate it, because when you can't articulate it, you really don't know. But once you can articulate it, then you have a frame of reference to be able to fix it, right? You may not have the endurance yet, but that's also a personal problem, right? Sometimes you got to go home and practice to get endurance. You know what I mean? Like, track runners run all the time to get faster. You know, cross-country runners run all the time to build endurance so that they can run races. I see these kids in my neighborhood. It's always just 2 of them at a time, and it's always different kids, but they just run after school to run because they know the more that they do that, the more that they're conditioning themselves to be able to go handle that 6, 7, 8 miles that they're going to do on the weekend with no sweat. Because at a certain point, it turns from just the pure function of, I just enjoy doing this to get better. And for a lot of students, if they don't enjoy the process, and this kind of goes back to a point we were talking about earlier, off camera, if they don't enjoy what they're doing, then that's going to be problematic to getting to where we want them to go. Like, if the director doesn't reach the actual part of what they're doing, then it's hard to get them to where they need to go ultimately. They're always going to be almost there, but not quite, because we're not really speaking to hear. We're just kind of speaking. And I feel like that's a big overteaching trap when we haven't actually connected with the students. So then it's like it's like Mario. We keep like every time we fall back down the trap again, and we have to build back up, but we can't get across the gap because we're not actually speaking to what it is, at the why of what they're doing. You know what I mean? I'm gonna use that tomorrow, though. No lies. I'm gonna text y'all as soon as I finish doing it too.
That's so good. Yeah. I love that John used the Bloom's taxonomy stuff, because I use that in my indoor presentations every year. I think WGI has a similar type model, and I feel like it's so good so that students understand, like, hey, you know, you're trying to bump up what it is that you know as a person and as a performer, so that you can come in the next season, you can come in at creating, right? You can come in at completely understanding what it is. And maybe there's some things that you don't know because we're challenging you a little bit, but you can be more of a part of the process because you understand that. And you can see, and I feel like I see this every year with my students. You know, the beginning of the year, I see that their knowing starts a little bit higher each season. You know, their understanding starts a little bit higher each season. So the first show, the scores start to show that. And the end of the year, it starts to show faster that they're getting closer to that creating range. So I think that it's important for educators, like John said, going back to the idea of parameters, and teachers as lead explorers, is to know where you want your students to go well enough that you can consistently measure them and consistently show them the measurement so that they get that sense of progress and forward movement, and that hopefully motivates them to continue, because they think about, hey, at the end of this season, the beginning of this season, I couldn't do this, and this. And now we're getting ready to go into the fall, or we're getting ready to go into percussion ensemble stuff or indoor, and I can already do this, and this that I couldn't do before. So now I'm starting on a completely different level than what I came at before. So I think that's important for educators to, one, not only measure our students with things like that, but also to kind of remind them of where they started and how much they've progressed, so that they can start to enjoy the process of getting better, the process of becoming a better performer.
Yeah, and we've got to give them opportunities to do that. You know, I think back to some of the most successful ensembles that I've taught, and one sticks out to my mind specifically, where I went and just bought kids like the notebooks, like just cheap notebooks from like Walmart or Target or whatever, like 50 cents for a notepad. And after every rehearsal, or after chunks even, it was like, all right, give yourself a score of a 1 to 10, 1 being I should never pick up sticks again, and 10 being that's as good as it can be with my current level of knowledge. And 10 is always evolving, just like it is for all of us. But 10 is always evolving, and then even taking it a step farther of going, what went well for you that rep? Write 1 or 2 things that went well for you that rep, and write 1 or 2 things that didn't go well for you that rep. And it'll be amazing when you start to talk about those things a little bit too, to see kind of where students are at in their analysis portion of their learning. Because as much as we can overteach, they can also overanalyze. Like we all have those students that like, when you're like talking about a downstroke, they're like, so what's the second knuckle of my pinky and the third knuckle of my ring finger doing? And how many ounces of pressure do I need to play a downstroke?
I love those kids because that resonates with me.
See, that does not, and that goes into the overteaching thing, because we were all at one point too, I'm sure, the teachers that were like, make sure you got to use the pinky to help the stick stop down and all this. And now at 34 years of age, here's how you play a downstroke. You stop the stick down. That's it. You take a stick, and instead of playing a full stroke, it goes down and it stops down. And that is literally like, I still have kids play a downstroke, it stops down, so it stops down, so it stops down, so it stops down. And it's like, we don't realize that when we overteach, sometimes we cause them to overanalyze, but also when we don't give them the opportunity to analyze their playing, we don't know what they're hearing. We don't know what they're experiencing, which means what we're experiencing. I had it in my rehearsal today. I was like listening to stuff, and like, I'm out front in front of the front ensemble, and I'm trying to experience the battery and the front ensemble at the same time. And I'm like, that was good. And my center marimba player looks at me. She's like, that was trash. And it's like, we're just experiencing different things, because she's in the ensemble. She's in there like standing listening to the front ensemble, and I'm taking in front to back timing. Mm-hmm. But it's like, right next to her is a kid that's like, that was amazing. That's the best thing I've ever played. And it's like trying to get them on an even level if we don't have those conversations about like, so what were you hearing? What were you hearing? What went well for you? What didn't go well for you? And even having them jot those written thoughts in a journal that they can keep through an entire season and be like, all right, go back to your first journal entry and see where you were. And now go to your last journal entry and see where you are. Goes a long way for them, I feel like.
But Ryan, that takes so much time, and we have to get good now because we got a game and on Friday and a competition on Saturday. And if we don't hit our check marks, we're going to get fired from our position because we're terrible teachers.
I think you got to definitely pick and choose those moments. I don't think it's going to be in October, right?
No,
like,
no.
We're not in October. All right, write down your comments. Like, them comments, man. Reset.
Let's be real though. I mean, ain't nobody gonna lose because ain't nobody gonna lose a job over anything like that. The only thing you're gonna lose a job over is a tiny band and everybody hates life. Like,
well, in Texas, that might not be the case.
You're not getting ones in Texas.
Yeah, you're right. In Texas, I'm sorry, I'm in Georgia, so we live by different rules.
Oh yeah, and in Ohio we live by way different rules.
Listen, there's lots of people.
Alabama, there ain't any rules.
Hey, it's true though.
Okay. So Ryan was talking about. Oh man.
Perspective.
No, yeah. So, talking about different perspectives, I was trying to think about what I was gonna say because it popped into my head when Ryan was talking about it, and I was thinking about the fact like every time we got off the field, the last couple summers, I would always start like our battery wrap up, and I always felt like we would huddle up together, and they thought that I was just gonna say, "You did this, you did this, you did this." You know what I mean? It's like, how did y'all feel about your run? It's their run. Like, they experienced it. Like, I experienced it from my point of view, but you had your own point of view that you experienced it at. And I guarantee the first thought that comes into their head about their experience is going to mean more to them than what I have to say on the outside. Ultimately, because most students are way more self-critical than we could ever be. And that's how it amplifies when we're critical on them, is because they're already taking something apart from what they did. And then when we come in with some comments, it's just like even more on top. You know, it's like just throwing mud. Like they've already buried themselves. And here we come with a shovel, like, and also, you know, just like dumping more on top.
Listen, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something though. Sometimes you got to though.
I'm
And
not
here's
saying
why.
you don't have to.
Here's why. And you know what? This is bad, but this is the reason why I do stuff like this. I have kids that miss stuff. Well, I'll say this. Sometimes it's mainly freshmen that they're just so oblivious that you just gotta get them anyway. Like you got kids that like they missed something in a show. Cause I had a student, which I probably told y'all this story before, and I'm sure this student isn't gonna watch this episode, but if he does, he already knows who he is. This student was supposed to flip a prop up.
Oh,
And
yeah.
everybody flips it up. This is the same kid that misses this in the prelims run and doesn't want to practice it outside in between runs, like before finals. Like I don't understand it. Now those kids, I almost don't even want to know what you think your run was like, because you have no frame of reference. You are not in the evaluating, analyzing sphere. You don't belong in that sphere. We gonna knock you down like one more to where you belong, which is like knowing and hopefully understanding what it is that you're supposed
They're
to
still in the remembering phase. The bottom.
You're right. Thank you. They're in the remembering phase. Oh, my prop goes up. That's where you are. The bottom of the food chain. That's like a 50 probably. If we were to give you a grade.
Okay,
Somewhere around there. But the rest of y'all students, God bless y'all. Y'all do a great job. And I don't ever mean to rain on your parade. I'm sure you guys had a great run. But that one kid, I'm coming to talk to you. I'm going to ask everybody how they did first. But I'm coming to you. We need to have a conversation.
I feel I've definitely had that moment to where I've addressed the group, and then I was like, I need to see so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so just for a couple minutes. Y'all just line up, and I'll call you over individually. Right, just the digital office by the truck. You know what I mean? It's like the digital office by the truck. What was that? Like, wait. All right, how can we get this figured out for the next run? Okay, this is what you need to do when you go home. You know what I mean?
Take your head off, let me put a pillow in, and let's tighten up that headache back in.
Yo, sometimes you gotta take them guts out. I'm just saying. Sometimes take the snares off. Sometimes it has to be done. You know what I mean?
You see this pad? We are going to glue it to your snare drum.
Oh man.
Listen, or like, hey, I saw one kid, you know, a drum corps that will remain nameless. This kid got taken out of the snare feature. This cat just had to do some visuals for like 4 to 8 counts. I was like, well, I've never seen this before. I was like, dang, boy, this is some upper level stuff. I learned something. I was put on game. Cause see, the person told me, it was like, hey, they can't judge what you're not playing. I was like, dang, that's really smart. Take the kid out, give him some visuals. There you go. Snare feature fixed.
It's true, but it's true, right? It's true, but it's true. I'm just saying. It's true, but it's true.
Listen.
Oh, man.
Cool. Anything else?
I think we deconstructed overteaching. I don't want to overteach this episode. I think we did just the right amount of analyzation of how you should not overteach and alternatives to overteaching. So
now everyone go out and create new situations without overteaching. Namaste, everyone. I'm gonna butcher the ending, because I don't know our social media stuff. So,
I got it. So please feel free to check us out. We are broadcasting on all the digital podcasting platforms. We're also on YouTube. You can find us on Instagram at Volta Percussion. Please go ahead and send us an email. We would love to chit-chat with all of you out there, learn about new topics, and just hear what you think. You can email us at voltapercussion@gmail.com. Ooh, before we leave this episode, I just want to bring this up because I've been hearing this on the radio a lot. It's about this website called DuckDuckGo. I just think it's hilarious because the name of the website is really funny, but their commercials, they try to make it real serious, and they've got like the serious female voice actor, and she's like, and when you're in a pinch, just visit DuckDuckGo. I'm like, okay, really? Like, I don't, I don't know. It doesn't make it more appealing. It's just like, okay, like it don't fit. It feel like it should be one of those wacky commercials, you know what I mean? But it's not. It's like dead
like
serious.
Affleck or something.
Right, exactly. But it's DuckDuckGo. It's like, you realize you're saying Duck Duck Goose, and that's all I'm gonna hear when I hear it, right? Cool. So, John, you want to finish this out? I gave them
anyway. Appreciate
stuff.
it. Anyone, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Volta Percussion. I am joined with my good friends, Elanders Frazier, Robert Dickens Jr., and Ryan Reed. My name is John Gaal, and I'm signing off. Hope you have a wonderful morning /afternoon/evening whenever you're listening to this. Until next time, my friends.